Welcome to the weather forecast on VTB TN8 channel. Dear friends, the weather is about to change big storm. In this forecast, we're going to talk about a significant late-season heat wave that will bring above normal temperatures to the United States throughout the weekend. We'll also look at the increased risk of severe weather with damaging winds, large hail, and isolated tornadoes throughout the weekend as warm air and cold air meet. And then we'll look at your full tropical weather update at the end, including some interesting developments here and new developments in the Atlantic Basin and Pacific Basin. If you like this video, please share it with your friends, family, and on social media. Comment in the comments below the video. I really appreciate it. Please subscribe to the channel to follow. Thank you. Let's see, that's high pressure, where there's a mountain range in southern and central Canada, and the center of that mountain range is west of Hudson Bay. We have a trough of low pressure here into the Rocky Mountains. We also have a trough of low pressure to the southeast toward Florida and the southeast coast. That means that where there's low pressure, we're going to have more cloud cover and more dynamic weather. That's where the cooler temperatures are. In the west, especially the desert southwest, it's going to be a little cooler. And then on the southeast coast, it's also cooler into much of Alaska. And then where there's a big ridge of high pressure in the middle from Canada and it extends down into the plains and the Mississippi Valley in the central United States. That's where we're going to have warmer than normal temperatures this weekend. And those temperatures are going to feel like we're in the mid to upper 90s in parts of Missouri, including the Ozarks, all the way down into Arkansas, Mississippi, into Louisiana, eastern Texas, and those 90s extend all the way down into southern Minnesota today. Now, we're going to have a new warmer day as we're expecting temperatures in the mid to upper 60s across the central United States. Another warm day is expected with temperatures in the mid to upper 90s from the middle Mississippi Valley and lower Mississippi back here into the southern plains. Notice the cold front starting to push down into the plains. That's going to bring severe weather concerns as we go through this weekend. So an isolated severe weather threat from the Dakotas down here into western Nebraska, including the Nebraska Panhandle, much of Colorado down into New Mexico and western Texas. We also have a threat here into the Illinois Valley of eastern Illinois and western Indiana. However, the main threat will be strong winds, large hail, but there could be a few tornadoes. Note that the area of concern for isolated severe weather will shift a little farther out into the plains as we head into tomorrow afternoon and evening. So if you get into the area of severe storms, you could see wind gusts of up to 60 miles per hour, hail at least the size of a penny, and a localized risk of tornadoes from the Dakotas all the way into Nebraska, Colorado, New Mexico, and West Texas. Some of these storms could hit the Amarillo and Leach, Texas areas, all the way into the Texas Panhandle. By Monday, our low-pressure system will move into the northern plains, and an accompanying cold front will bring more showers and thunderstorms across the plains. And again, 60 miles per hour winds and hail at least the size of a dime will be the main threats, followed by some heavy rain in parts of southeastern Saskatchewan, Canada into the mostly central and western Dakotas. A few storms here will push into the Chicagoland, Milwaukee, down to Indianapolis metro area. So we'll be watching this through Friday. September 19th, the large ridge of high pressure is still holding up across the Canadian prairies, and the pressure is dropping off near the Gulf Coast. First of all, this is going to bring very warm temperatures to the Canadian prairies in the eastern half of the United States, mostly along and east of the Mississippi River as we head into next week with a little bit of cool air left behind the front in the Rocky Mountains. And that's going to spread some of that moisture further east. It's going to be very dry in the Midwest. You'll probably see some rainfall Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday through Friday. And then finally, over the weekend, we'll probably be talking about some rainfall totals in Wisconsin, northern Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, Michigan, parts of northern Indiana, maybe even northern Ohio. Now, we've got some snowfall in elevations up there, and a few feet of snow could fall there into southeast Alaska, southwest Yukon, Canada, northwest British Columbia, and the mountains here. There's definitely going to be some big snowfall as we head into next week with a few feet expected there. Finally, as we head into the last week of September, the ridge of high pressure is still anchored over Hudson Bay there into the Northwest Territories of central Canada. The ridge of high pressure coming in from the Aleutian Islands into the Pacific Northwest is going to bring us some cooler air. And that's going to happen across the eastern two-thirds of the country as well as the United States. As far as precipitation, late September looks like it's going to be pretty active, especially in the Pacific Northwest first. We're going to see the storm track move a little further south and east through the Rocky Mountains into the southern plains, and then up through the Ohio Valley. I think as we get closer, we're going to start seeing more storms. It's important to note that these areas are still pretty stormy. Areas in the Rocky Mountains and the central states here are still pretty stormy over the weekend. Now, as we get into Monday, Tuesday, we're going to see a similar system. Maybe a little bit more intense than the system we saw last week, where it's going to be pretty dismal along the southeast coast and the mid-Atlantic. Some rain. Cooler temperatures than the areas further inland. It's going to be pretty dismal at times. Monday here on the 15th, we could see a lot of rain along South Carolina, North Carolina there. As we get into Tuesday, we're going to see a lot of Virginia and even southern Maryland there get impacted. Same with the Carolinas. Again, the central states are really going strong in terms of precipitation throughout the upcoming weather pattern. Every Wednesday, we're seeing South Carolina, North Carolina, now West Virginia, and even parts of Maryland and Delaware start to see some dreary and cooler conditions than the inland areas. But what's interesting is we can see it drop off quite a bit in those dreary areas, where they're likely to see cooler conditions than areas like Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, where there's more of a southerly flow moving in. That dreary weather is leading to some cooler conditions in the coastal areas midweek. On Thursday, the 18th, that storm system is still there. Much lighter, maybe foggy, just coming down. It's mostly cloudy here in the mid-Atlantic. Overall, we're seeing quite a few showers again in the northern plains and upper Midwest areas at this point. We've got a low pressure area east of the Hudson Bay. It's trying to push some cold air in. Well, we've got a little bit of low pressure building up to the west. It'll be interesting to see if that can pull the cool air down completely. Forecast for early next week. So here's the 22nd, and we're seeing a lot of showers here across the southeast into the mid-Atlantic as well as some of the Ohio Valley, and overall your jet stream is a little bit of a trough to the east. As we get closer to the middle of that week, we can see that a lot of this rain eventually moves more into the northern Atlantic and northeast. Let's look at the totals here. And we can see a fair amount of it in the central states. Again, they're going to be doing pretty well and improving significantly in some areas of the Corollas, the mid-Atlantic, and the northeast. So let's take a look at those anomalies. And again, it's still very dry in the deep south and the southeast. But we're starting to see some significant improvement in the outlook for areas along the mid-Atlantic and the northeast. Let's take a closer look at the weather pattern for next week. It's going to be very hot. There's a heat wave developing across much of the United States. Florida, especially South Florida, you're not going to get any rest. It's going to be a constant rainstorm in South Miami, but it's finally going to stop. Tuesday looks like it's going to be rainy, but not as wet as today. It's going to start to dry out in, Central Florida, northward, up into the Carolinas and Georgia. It's going to be very dry by the end of next week. South Florida, you still have a cold front nearby, bringing rain. In the meantime, it's building up. There's a big heat wave here, heading toward the middle of the country. Temperatures are in the mid to upper 90s, nearing 100. Tuesday. It looks like this front is moving far enough that I think we're starting to dry out. Other than a few thunderstorms with a sea breeze blowing in, Florida looks much better all weekend. Let's go to North America. A ridge of high pressure is starting to form across the plains up into the prairies of southern Canada. On either side of that ridge, to the east on the east coast, we have a trough of low pressure coming down there, across the mid-Atlantic. And we have a stronger trough coming down into California and Nevada, across the desert southwest and the west coast. Now, looking at the temperatures down there, we're going to see temperatures warming up and getting warmer every day through next week. So Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and into the northeast this afternoon, temperatures will go up another notch tomorrow. The 90 degrees line will shift north. Same thing in St. Louis. Des Moines will be in the 90s and St. Louis will be in the 95s. Lakeside temperatures in Chicago. Temperatures in the Twin Cities will also warm up to around 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And temperatures will continue to rise. Notice the cold front starting to move down into the northwest plains as we head into next week. That's because some cold fronts from rain will bring temperatures down into the 70s across the north-central plains, from the Dakotas to Nebraska and Kansas. That rain and cold air can bring some severe weather. We have a slight risk of severe weather stretching from southeastern Montana to western North Dakota. And notice that near the low-pressure system on the US-Canada border, that's where there's going to be more organized thunderstorms. That's where that slight risk is. The further south and west you go toward the Rocky Mountains into Colorado, the more isolated the storm coverage will be. High winds, large hail will be the main risk. The tornado threat is pretty low. Note that we have more isolated severe weather from Montana east into the Dakotas into northern Wyoming and another down into the Four Corners. Although further south into Colorado, New Mexico and parts of Texas and Oklahoma. And you can see storms starting to form across the western plains. Overall, the precipitation will continue from Monday morning, September 15th through the middle of the month. So this is a kind of do or die forecast as we head into next weekend. A large ridge of high pressure is forming across Canada, and we see a little bit of low pressure near the Gulf Coast. Overall, this is a forecast for a warmer third week of September across the Canadian prairies and all the way down into the Mississippi Valley, continuing the warm weather. This will bring some rain to the upper Midwest and plains next week, especially mid to late week as a cold front pushes south from Canada. And that will try to bring some cold air south. But again, it will bring some additional shower and thunderstorm potential across Minnesota, down into Iowa, into the eastern Dakotas, into Nebraska and Kansas. And it will be a little more isolated as it moves south into Oklahoma and Texas. Now, as we look at the last week of September, we've got a big trough of low pressure here, stretching across Nova Scotia, Newfoundland and eastern Quebec in eastern Atlantic Canada. And we also have a big mountain range up there, stretching into parts of Hudson Bay in Canada. We're going to try to see some low pressure build up, which is going to potentially bring a cold front again across the United States in the last week of September. That's going to bring some relief from the temperatures, but it's going to bring a little bit more rain and precipitation south. So we're talking about the Central Plains again, the Midwest into the Ohio Valley, and then probably a little bit drier in the Northeast as well, the Southern Plains into the Southeast, including Florida as we go into the last week of September. The storm is going to start in the Pacific Northwest. It's going to move southeast toward Kansas and Oklahoma, and then it's going to pick up toward the mid-Atlantic. That's where the heavy rain is going to be as we go into the last week of September, through September 30th. Gabrielle looks like it's going to make landfall this weekend. And then we've got a couple more waves forming. And then we've got a couple more deeper waves out in the Atlantic with some new developments. I want to keep an eye on it through the Caribbean. Some rainfall totals that come with it. A spot here near the Carolina coast south through Florida, Georgia and the Bahamas, has a low chance of development. But there's a higher chance of development here as it moves off the coast of Africa. We've got a couple of other areas we're watching, but it's a big area near Cabo Verde with the potential for flooding on some of the islands over the next couple of days. This is a tropical front that's coming in. Guadeloupe, Martinique, Dominica. Watch for some showers and storms that will eventually push south through our Trinidad. We'll have some heavier rainfall in the northern and central Bahamas. We've seen some rain near Honduras, Belize, Guatemala since last night and this morning. And here, this is a system called Mario that's weakened but still picking up some rain in the eastern Pacific. Anywhere from the southern coast of Mexico all the way to Cabo San Lucas. We're going to be moving into the eastern Pacific. With a tropical wave off the coast of Africa, it's going to come through. Of course, if it gets close to us in the Caribbean, the Bahamas, and then it goes through the Gulf, we know that the water temperatures there are very warm at this point. So that's a big concern for the potential for development. Developing into a tropical storm or a hurricane. It's still 3 to 4 days away, but 6, 7, 8 days away. The European model has a stronger system, potentially a hurricane closer to the northeastern Caribbean, just to the northeast as we head into next week. Now, we're looking at some areas of rain. Nicaragua, South, Costa Rica, Panama, Dominican Republic, Haiti, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, Cuba, some scattered showers and storms. A tropical wave is moving in today. I mentioned Guadeloupe, Martinique, Dominica, St. Lucia, Barbados. Some showers that could be a tropical wave moving in. No development from that shower. But as we get into next week, we'll be watching the rain accumulate anywhere from Jamaica back to Belize to see if anything unusual happens. That rain could be increasing back into the Gulf, some of it is additional rain. So know that I'm watching that area as well as we get into next week. Just to be objective, but keep an eye on the Carolinas. Also, some rain is slowly moving up into the Texas Panhandle. Some heavy rain activity is moving back through the Rocky Mountains. There's even some snow at higher elevations. But as we move forward, looking for some rain anywhere from Manitoba south through the Dakotas. But let's see what happens as we get into early next week. The moisture is pulling back through Bermuda. So let's see that rain right here in Bermuda, but it could leave a little bit of a residual eddy, a little bit of residual moisture. So Monday into Tuesday, there could be a small area of low pressure. It may not be a tropical depression, but just watch this near the middle of the Atlantic as we turn toward the Corollas as we get into next week. Watching Mexico. There's a couple of areas to watch as we get into next week, and I'll just watch to see if there are any storms that come back into Mexico. Now, the ocean. The Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean, there's some small swells here and there. The Atlantic is going to start to rise. But this spot near the Outer Banks of North Carolina is turning back to Bermuda. The seas are going to be a little bit higher, especially if something tries to spin up here. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that as we head into next week. Now, the rainfall totals are going to continue over the next couple of days, and the rain will continue to pour down into the Bahamas. We'll see scattered thunderstorms. But some very large areas of the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Cuba, and Jamaica will see scattered rain. There may or may not be rain in the Cayman Islands, but if we do get a storm, we're talking about the potential for up to 100 millimeters of rain in a single storm. As the next tropical wave comes in, from Puerto Rico all the way down to St. Lucia, we could have totals of over 50 millimeters over about 3 days, down into St. Vincent, the Grenadines, Grenada, Barbados, and a little bit into Trinidad and Tobago. Northern Venezuela. The rain potential will increase. And of course, some of the heavy rains here, back in Central America, tracking the landslides in the rivers, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. Especially the west, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama and Belize. Areas of western Mexico with some tropical moisture coming in. Some spots could see over 150 millimeters of rain. A lot of rain is tracking those rivers. And then there's where the fall air is and it's a little drier, definitely drier, and some cooler weather has moved into some of the southern United States.